Fear is perhaps the most cunning adversary we will ever face. It does not strike with the sudden violence of a lightning bolt, but rather seeps quietly into the crevices of our mind, whispering doubt, hesitation, and false limitation. It's invisible, intangible, and yet left unchecked, it will rule your life more completely than any dictator or tyrant could ever dream of. We are not born with fear. We learn it, we absorb it, and we allow it to become our master. But here's the truth. Fear is nothing more than a shadow, cast by the mind that forgot its own power. And today I want to show you exactly how to step out of that shadow forever. Now, before we go further, I want to invite you to subscribe and stay with us on this journey of mastery. The messages I share are not simply information, they are keys. Keys that can unlock your potential and remove the mental barriers that hold most people back. And if you're someone who is serious about growth, someone who is done living below their capability, then you belong here. By subscribing, you're making a declaration, not just to this channel, but to yourself, that you are no longer willing to settle for fear, for doubt, or for mediocrity. So let us begin. When we speak of fear, we must understand its true nature. Fear is not a thing. It is the absence of understanding. It is what fills the void when clarity, confidence, and purpose are missing. And just like darkness disappears in the presence of light, fear disappears when you shine the lamp of disciplined thought upon it. The person who masters fear is not the one who never feels afraid, but the one who knows how to act in spite of it. He knows what fear really is, an illusion, persistent, persuasive, and persuasive only if left unexamined. There is a story I often think of when I've shared with businessmen, teachers, students, and soldiers alike. A man wakes each morning with a weight in his chest. He tells himself it's normal. He says everyone's anxious, everyone's uncertain, but days become weeks, and weeks become years, and he still hasn't done the things he dreamed of doing. Why? Because every time he approached the edge of action, fear whispered, "What if you fail?" And he listened. That man isn't rare. He is, tragically, the norm. But it does not have to be your story. Fear is a habit, and like any habit, it can be broken. The most successful individuals you'll ever meet are not those who avoided fear, but those who faced it down daily. They treated fear like a signal, not a stop sign. Whenever it appeared, they knew they were approaching something meaningful, something worthy. And so they leaned in, they stepped forward. You see, fear protects nothing, it only postpones. It postpones the life you were meant to live. It stalls your talents, it delays your mission, and it distorts your perception of what's possible. You were never meant to live cautiously. You were meant to live consciously. And that brings me to a law I want to share with you now. A law that is as old as time and as powerful as any truth ever spoken. You cannot be free while you are enslaved to fear. Write it down. Speak it aloud. Comment it if you must. Say, "I walk with clarity. I am greater than fear." Let this be more than a phrase. Let it be your new inner rhythm. Because the moment you believe in it, your life begins to reshape around it. The mind obeys the language you feed it. Feed it courage, and you will act with courage. Feed it power, and you will walk with power. Feed it fear, and you will freeze. Many people believe fear is a sign they're doing something wrong. I tell you, fear is often the clearest sign you're finally doing something right. The man who feels nothing is either asleep or already dead. But the man who feels fear and moves anyway, that man is alive. That man is on the path. Fear is energy. It is adrenaline. It is signal. Use it. Don't waste it. Transmute it into action. The same physiological state that creates panic also creates focus. The only difference is purpose. Channel your fear toward the vision that moves your soul, and you will become unstoppable. One of the reasons fear controls so many lives is that we have been conditioned to run from it. But think of a storm. It gathers above, dark and ominous. Most will seek shelter. But the eagle rises. It does not fight the storm. It uses the wind to lift itself higher. So must you. Don't fight fear. Rise above it. Use its pressure as the force that catapults you to a higher level of action, discipline, and clarity. Every time you feel fear and act anyway, you build the habit of resilience. And habit, not talent, is what ultimately defines the victorious life. You cannot wait for fear to disappear. You must walk through it. Action is the antidote. Movement defeats hesitation. Clarity comes through doing. When you feel uncertain, take a step. Any step. Fear lives in stillness, but in forward motion, it suffocates. The longer you wait to act, the louder fear becomes. So, start now, not tomorrow, not after the plan is perfect. Now, the world makes way for the man who knows where he's going, and that path is cleared not by hope, but by movement. The mind will believe what you prove to it through repetition. Tell it daily, I am not afraid. I act with purpose. I am built to overcome. These are not just affirmations, they are commands, and your life, like a faithful servant, will follow. Remember, fear will always visit, but it does not have to unpack its bags. You can let it knock and still not open the door. That's your power. That's your choice. So here is your first test. Write down a fear you've been tolerating. Name it. Then decide what one action you can take today to move through it. And do it. Just one. It may be small, but it's not about scale, it's about direction. Mastery begins in motion. Let this be the day you declare with clarity and courage, I am one with wealth and wisdom. Free of fear and doubts. Say it, believe it, and then move as though it were true, because it is. Fear, once understood, begins to lose its power, but understanding alone is not enough. You must study fear as a mechanic studies his engine, not with superstition, but with precision. Fear thrives on vagueness. It multiplies in the unknown. But the moment you give it shape, the moment you define it, you begin to reclaim control. Let's define it now. Fear is imagination misused. It is your greatest gift, your creative mind turned against you. You are the author of the story, yet fear tricks you into believing you are only a character. But the truth is, the same mind that creates fear can destroy it. The same imagination that builds castles of doubt can just as quickly construct a fortress of faith. The key is in your awareness. If you can see fear, you can face it. And if you can face it, you can defeat it. Let me ask you a question. How many opportunities have you allowed to pass simply because you feared discomfort? How many moments of greatness have slipped by because fear told you it wasn't the right time, or that you weren't ready, or that others would laugh? The reality is this: fear doesn't protect you. It only preserves your current limitations. It keeps you where you are. It builds a cage and paints the bars with just enough logic that you think you're being reasonable. But it's still a cage. It doesn't matter if it's gold-plated. If it limits your potential, it's a prison. And no man was born to live imprisoned by his own thoughts. If you truly want to master fear, you must first acknowledge that it will never fully leave you. And that's not a weakness. That's a gift. Fear is not to be destroyed, but redirected. Think of fire. In the wild, it consumes. But when harnessed, it warms your home. The same is true of fear. Unchecked, it ruins lives. Controlled, it sharpens them. The man who runs from fear remains its victim. But the man who turns and walks into it becomes its master. He begins to understand that fear is a compass pointing directly to the next level of his evolution. What you fear most often hides what you desire most. We live in a world where most people will spend their entire lives trying to avoid fear. They play it safe. They do what's expected. They never question the narrative. And at the end of it all, they regret not the things they did, but the things they didn't. Because the truth always catches up, that they were capable of more, that they listened to the wrong voice, and so they settle for comfort over courage, for safety over significance. But you, if you are still listening, you are not most people. You are one of the few who will walk toward the discomfort, not away from it. There is a great law that governs this. You will grow in direct proportion to the fear you are willing to face. Make it your declaration today. Write it, speak it, and comment it below. Say, I expand through fear. I advance through discomfort. This is the law of conscious expansion. Avoid what frightens you and you remain small. Face it and you become vast. That is how the few rise above the many. That is how the extraordinary emerge from the ordinary. Not by avoiding fear, but by forging their character through it. Take a look at the most respected people in history, the ones who changed the course of nations, ideas, and industries. None of them were without fear, but all of them chose not to serve it. Instead, they served purpose. They knew their mission was greater than their emotions, and so they acted anyway. Action in the face of fear is what builds legacy. It's what separates those who speak about dreams from those who manifest them. The man who acts despite fear builds confidence, and confidence, once built, becomes a silent force that moves mountains. If you want to increase your confidence, stop seeking comfort. Comfort does not grow courage, only tension does. Begin placing yourself intentionally into situations that demand more from you. Speak when you would usually remain silent. Move when you would normally hesitate. Take the shot, make the ask, start the project. Not for perfection, but for proof. Proof that you are not bound by fear, that you are the architect, not the captive of your destiny. You do not need to eradicate fear. You only need to act faster than it can take hold. There is one exercise I recommend to everyone seeking to break the grip of fear. Do one thing each day that scares you. It doesn't have to be grand, just uncomfortable, just unfamiliar. Start small. Call someone you've been avoiding. Record your voice, share an idea, face the unknown. Over time, this becomes a rhythm, a pattern, a lifestyle, and slowly but surely you become someone others admire, not because you were born fearless, but because you trained yourself to walk through the fire. The path to mastering fear is the path of action. That is the secret the world will never shout at you, but the one you must whisper to yourself every single morning. Act anyway. Fear is loud in your mind, but it is powerless in your movement. The moment you step forward, its grip weakens. Keep moving and it dissolves. But stand still and it multiplies. So don't wait for courage to find you. Build it through daily confrontation. Build it through consistent direction. And above all, build it through unshakable identity. Because the truth is this: fear is not just a barrier, it is a teacher. And the faster you learn its lessons, the faster you rise. So when it shows up again, and it will, don't run. Smile, nod, and step forward. Let your soul know that you are no longer governed by survival, but by purpose. And that purpose will carry you further than fear ever could. Remember the law. Post it. Live it. I expand through fear. I advance through discomfort. Speak it as your anthem. Let it carry you beyond limitation. You cannot escape fear by hiding from it. You must rise above it by outgrowing it. Most people try to negotiate with fear. They try to reason with it, avoid it, suppress it, but fear is not an opponent you out-talk. It is a force you outgrow. Think of it like a suit you wore when you were younger. Perhaps it once fit, perhaps it served a purpose, but now it's tight, restrictive, and outdated. Fear once helped you survive, but you're not here to survive. But you're not here to survive. You're here to expand, to lead, to elevate. So the question is not whether fear exists, it always will. The question is whether you will let it dictate your pace, your voice, and your path, or whether you will rise beyond it through growth. Every time you make a decision based on fear, you reinforce the idea that the world is dangerous and that you are fragile. But each time you decide based on truth, based on vision, you affirm your strength and reshape your reality. You see, your life is not shaped by your circumstances, it is shaped by your responses. Fear may knock, but you do not have to answer. You can look it squarely in the eye and say, I know who I am now. And that, more than anything, is what disarms fear. Identity. When you remember who you are, when you hold in your mind a clear, strong image of the person you've decided to become, fear begins to shrink. This is where we must introduce the concept of self-image, because fear attaches itself to the image you hold of yourself. If your self-image is weak, fear will be loud. If your self-image is strong, fear will barely whisper. Most people don't realize this. Your subconscious mind always moves you in the direction of your dominant self-concept. If you believe you are unworthy, unready, incapable, you will behave in ways that confirm that belief. But if you believe you are capable, courageous, and chosen, you will act accordingly. You do not get what you want. You get what you are, and you are what you consistently think about. So let's reinforce a new thought, a new mantra, a new law. I am the master of my mind. Fear follows me, not the other way around. Post it below. Say it aloud. Own it until your actions reflect it. Now let's take this further. You must stop waiting to feel ready. That phrase, I don't feel ready, has stolen more dreams than failure ever could. Readiness is not a feeling. It is a decision. You decide to move. You decide to act. And only then do the feelings catch up. You'll rarely feel ready when it matters most. The great men and women of history didn't wait for readiness. They cultivated readiness through action. They understood the law of reversed priority. Act first and the feeling will follow. That's the difference between amateurs and professionals. Amateurs wait. Professionals initiate. And if you want a professional life, a life of leadership, of abundance, of true self-expression, you must move first. One of the greatest ways to defeat fear is to move your body. Physiology creates psychology. Posture affects perception. Stand tall. Breathe deeply. Look forward. The body tells the mind what to believe. When you change your stance, you change your state. Do not underestimate the power of simple shifts. Shoulders back, eyes up, pace deliberate. These are not small details. They are commands to the nervous system. And the more you move as a confident person would, the more your mind follows suit. This is not about pretending, it's about training. You are training yourself to live at a higher level. You are rehearsing greatness until it becomes instinct. Let's talk now about something few discuss: the silent fears. These are not the obvious fears of public speaking or rejection. These are the subtle fears that live deep beneath your thoughts. The fear of success, the fear of responsibility, the fear of leaving the crowd behind. Yes, fear of success is real, because to succeed, you must outgrow who you were. You must step into unfamiliar light, and that light exposes every doubt, every crack in your identity. It demands more of you. That's why people unconsciously sabotage themselves, not because they're weak, but because they haven't yet built the self-concept strong enough to carry the weight of success. And so I challenge you today to take inventory. Ask yourself not what you're afraid of, but what fear is protecting. Often fear guards the threshold to your next level. It says, stay here, it's safe, you know this place. But you must ask, is safety worth the price of greatness? And is familiarity worth the cost of your calling? Most will say yes, and remain where they are. But a few, those who truly live, will say no. They'll burn the ships. They'll walk forward with no map, only a mission. They'll trade safety for significance, and to them, life reveals its treasures. There is another law I want you to remember, one that has proven itself across every generation, every field, every life. Your external life will never outpace your internal vision. If you cannot see yourself as bold, you will never act boldly. If you cannot see yourself as powerful, you will always act with hesitation. Vision is not luxury, it is requirement. So take a moment, close your eyes, and ask, who do I see when I picture myself successful? What is his posture, her pace, their presence? Get clear, because clarity cuts fear in half, and the clearer your identity becomes, the quieter fear becomes. Let me leave you with this. Fear is loudest at the edge of transformation. It senses change. It senses breakthrough. And so it howls. But that is not a warning. It is a welcome. It is the sound of your former self giving way to your future self. So do not turn back. Lean in. This is the moment. This is the signal. And when the mind resists, respond with action. When fear whispers, move louder than its voice. And when all else feels uncertain, hold to this law and repeat it until it becomes your truth. I am the master of my mind. Fear follows me, not the other way around. This is how greatness is forged, not in comfort, but in the fire. Mastery over fear is not achieved in a single moment. It is earned through repetition, through habit, through the deliberate crafting of one's inner world. It is not enough to understand fear intellectually. You must rewire the nervous system to respond to fear with clarity, not collapse. And this, like anything worth mastering, takes daily effort. You would not expect to lift a heavy weight if you've never trained your muscles. Why then expect to carry the burdens of destiny if you've never trained your will? Each day you must enter the arena of your mind and lift the weights of courage, intention, and conscious thought. For fear, like rust, eats most easily at an unpolished tool. And you were never meant to be anything less than sharpened steel. The brain, magnificent as it is, defaults to protection, not progression. Its primal instinct is safety. But safety and greatness are rarely found on the same road. The mind says, stay small, stay hidden, stay known. But the soul says, rise, risk, reveal. And so you are called to become the bridge between the two. The person who learns to override the fear-based impulse with a purpose-driven decision. You must not wait until fear disappears. You must act while it shouts. You must walk while it trembles. And you must speak while your voice shakes. Because the reward is not the absence of fear, it is the presence of power. Consider this. Every single breakthrough you've had in life was preceded by discomfort. You were afraid the first time you spoke up, the first time you applied, the first time you tried something new. But you did it anyway. And what happened? Growth, expansion, new identity. That was not a coincidence, that was a pattern. Fear marks the boundary between who you are and who you could be. And each time you cross that boundary, you don't just win, you evolve. But if you let fear stop you, you don't just stay the same, you shrink. Because the mind learns from inaction too. It says, every time I feel fear, I retreat. And soon it becomes a reflex. But that can be reversed, that can be retrained. The next time fear appears, and it will, I want you to pause and say, there it is, my signal, my compass, and then move, not because the fear is gone, but because the purpose is stronger. This simple act of movement of advancing while afraid is the seed of every great transformation. It is not heroic in the beginning, it feels awkward, it feels unsure, but like a muscle, it strengthens. Like fire, it spreads, and soon it becomes who you are. You no longer need to hype yourself up. Courage becomes default, confidence becomes baseline, and action becomes instinct. Now let me give you a powerful law, one that if lived will separate you from 95% of the world. Fear is a liar, but action reveals the truth. Let me say it again, because this is the hinge on which transformation swings. Fear is a liar, but action reveals the truth. Post it, speak it, engrave it into your being. Say, I reveal truth through action. I no longer listen to fear. The world is full of people paralyzed by lies. Lies about what could happen, what might fail, what others may say. But the few, the brave, the uncommon, they act. And in doing so, they discover. They discover that the monster was made of paper, that the wall was just a shadow, and that the fear was only as powerful as their belief in it. Let's go deeper. Fear is a master of disguise. Sometimes it looks like procrastination. Other times it wears the mask of perfectionism. It says, I'm not afraid, I'm just preparing. But the preparation never ends. It says, I just want to get it right. But what it really means is, I'm afraid to be seen getting it wrong. Strip back the language and you'll often find that fear is the real author behind the script. But once you recognize it, once you see through the costume, you can rewrite the part. You can fire fear as your director and hire purpose instead. We must become conscious of our language, because words are the software that programs our internal world. If you constantly say, I'm scared, I'm nervous, or I can't, your subconscious takes those as commands. But if you begin saying, I'm ready, I'm built for this, I am choosing courage, your subconscious aligns with that identity. You do not need to feel brave to speak brave. Speak first. The feelings will follow. The subconscious is loyal. It follows the voice that speaks with the most repetition and the most certainty. Make sure that voice is yours. Here's something practical. The next time fear rises up, do not analyze it. Do not debate it. Label it. Name it. Say this is fear. Then act. Train the mind to see fear as a trigger for motion, not a cue to pause. In time, the brain rewires itself. The response to fear becomes action. The signal becomes your strength, and what once paralyzed you becomes your path. This is how leaders are made, not in moments of ease, but in the forge of decision under pressure. This is how you become dangerous, in the best possible way. Dangerous to doubt, dangerous to fear, unshakable, not because you never shake, but because you shake and still choose to rise. To all who are listening now, understand this. Fear will always knock, but with practice, it stops being the guest you entertain. It becomes background noise, something you hear but do not heed, something you feel but do not follow. And in that moment, you are free, free not from fear but from its control. And in that freedom there is power, the power to become who you were always meant to be, the power to walk, speak, lead, and serve from a higher place, not because you've never been afraid, but because you chose something greater. So once again, let this be your declaration. Let this be your code. I reveal truth through action. 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 I reveal truth. Downey Smope, Downey Doctor. Wary 7 Emission. I reveal truth reveal key. What was the wisdom it is truth reveal. I reveal truth reveal deep down. One of the most misunderstood aspects of fear is its role in shaping identity. You see, fear doesn't just stop actions, it forms identities. A man avoids confrontation once, then twice, then 10 times. Eventually, he doesn't just act afraid, he believes he is someone who cannot face pressure. A woman hesitates to speak her mind. Over time, she stops even forming opinions. Fear creates repetition, and repetition creates identity. But here's the truth: your identity is not fixed. It is not fate. It is programmable. And fear only wins when you stop writing your own code. The moment you become aware that fear is shaping who you are, you reclaim the pen. You begin rewriting the story, not from the outside in, but from the inside out. Think of fear as a sculptor. It carves away parts of your potential unless you stop its hand. But if you interrupt the pattern, if you disrupt the script, you can reverse the process. You can sculpt yourself deliberately, consciously, powerfully. The first step is awareness. You must ask, who have I become because of fear? What thoughts, actions, or words have I abandoned to avoid discomfort? What version of myself is trapped behind the bars of fear-induced limitation? These are not easy questions, but they are necessary, because every moment you delay answering them, the more solidified that false identity becomes. And I say false because it is not who you truly are, it is who fear has made you pretend to be. Let me give you a principle that has the power to shake the foundation of fear. Nothing that fear tells you is final. It may sound convincing, it may echo with authority, but fear has no final word. It only has volume, and volume is not truth. Fear shouts to silence your intuition. It projects worst-case scenarios to keep you stuck in place. But the person who learns to pause, to listen deeper, hears something else, a whisper from within, that says you were made for more. That whisper is often drowned by fear's noise. But if you're quiet, if you're present, you'll hear it. And once you hear it, you can never unhear it. That's the call to become. Here's something to understand. Fear is not evidence that something is wrong. It is often proof that something is right. When you're on the verge of growth, fear shows up, not to stop you, but to test your readiness. It's the threshold guardian. It asks, are you serious about change? Are you willing to pay the price of transformation? And if your answer is yes, not through words but through movement, you pass. Not because you had no fear, but because you moved while it was still present. This is the discipline that makes men unstoppable. They no longer negotiate with fear. They no longer ask for its permission. They move as if they've already become the person fear says they're not. Let me share a law that reveals a deeper truth. You do not conquer fear. You transcend it by becoming someone it can no longer control. Think on that. Meditate on it. Speak it aloud. Post it in the comments if you're serious about change. I transcend fear. I outgrow what once held me. This is the path to power. Not to fight fear forever, but to grow beyond its reach. And how do you grow? Through decision, through repetition, through self-directed evolution. The goal is not to win a battle with fear. The goal is to become someone for whom fear is irrelevant. Someone who is led by purpose, not by protection. Someone who recognizes that security is not safety, it's stagnation. Take inventory now of your rituals. What do you practice daily? Because practice becomes identity. If you practice hesitation, you'll become hesitant. If you practice boldness, even in small ways, you'll become bold. And if you practice avoidance, your capacity to handle challenge will shrink. That is the math of mastery. There is no mystery to it. What you do repeatedly, you become automatically. So if you want to become someone fearless, start practicing presence, action, and clarity every day. You don't need dramatic leaps. You need small, consistent proof that fear does not control you. Over time, the compound interest of courage will remake you. Let me be clear. This is not about pretending that danger doesn't exist. It's about discerning the difference between true danger and imagined limitation. Most fears are not physical, they're psychological. Not lions, but judgments. Not cliffs, but criticism. And yet your body reacts the same. Adrenaline, doubt, tightness in the chest. But once you realize that 90% of your fears are imagined, you free yourself to act. The body may feel it, but the mind no longer believes it. And when the mind stops believing fear, fear loses its authority. Here's a powerful habit that will rewire your nervous system. Speak the truth when you feel afraid. Not later, not when it's safe. In the moment, say the hard thing. Make the bold request. Tell the truth. Why? Because truth dismantles fear like light dismantles darkness. Fear feeds on secrecy, silence, suppression. But truth is fearless. It may shake your voice, but it sharpens your soul. And when you speak truth consistently, your mind begins to associate fear with power. It no longer says, avoid, it says, advance. That's when you become magnetic. That's when your presence begins to change rooms, not because you're fearless, but because you are in alignment with what is real. When people say, he's just confident, what they're really saying is, he's not ruled by fear. Confidence is clarity expressed without apology. It's what happens when someone has faced themselves, faced their doubts, faced the mirror, and decided to move forward anyway. And that can be you. Not someday, not when you have more time, more money, more affirmation, but now as you are. Because the world does not need perfect people. It needs people who are done being paralyzed. It needs men and women who are willing to feel fear and lead anyway. That is what builds movements. That is what builds legacies. So return to the law and let it anchor you. I transcend fear. I outgrow what once held me. That is not a statement of ego. It is a statement of purpose. Purpose does not bow to fear. It moves through it, above it, beyond it. And so must you. The time is now. Let your evolution begin. Fear often hides behind rationality. It dresses itself in the language of caution, in the tone of logic. It tells you to wait a little longer, to gather more information, to think it through just one more time. But that voice, subtle and calm as it may sound, is rarely speaking truth. It's speaking survival. Not in the physical sense, but in the psychological sense. It wants to preserve who you've been, not unleash who you could become. You see, every time you hesitate to follow your gut, every time you delay the first step, you feed the old version of yourself. And that version, the one built by habit, fear, and repetition, has no interest in your transformation. That version only knows what is safe, and what is safe is what is familiar. But let's be honest, familiarity is not the same as fulfillment. Too many people confuse the two. They stay in relationships, jobs, cities, mindsets, not because they are thriving, but because they are known. Because the discomfort of the unknown seems riskier than the certainty of unhappiness. That is fear at its most deceptive. It doesn't scream. It whispers, "This is fine." And so years go by, potential is left untouched, dreams are buried beneath routine, and lives become shadows of what they could have been. But not yours. Not anymore. You're here for a reason. You're hearing this because something inside you is stirring. Something that knows it is time to break the agreement with fear and make a covenant with your calling. Let me give you a law that will disrupt the illusion. Familiarity is not safety. Growth lives outside the known. Declare it, comment it, say it until your subconscious accepts it. I choose growth over comfort. I will not bow to familiar fears. Understand what this means. It means that fear is not your enemy. Comfort is. Comfort is the drug. Fear is the signal. And if you keep following the signal, if you keep stepping into the unknown despite trembling hands and racing thoughts, you will awaken a version of yourself that is not only fearless, but free. The reason most people fail to break through fear is because they try to think their way into courage. But courage is not born in thought. It is born in movement. Thought is useful, but only to a point. Once the decision is made, thinking becomes avoidance. Planning becomes paralysis. And fear grows stronger. So instead of asking, what if I never try? Instead of thinking of all the ways it could fail, visualize all the ways it could change your life, and then act. Even if it's messy, even if it's imperfect. Because messy action is worth more than perfect hesitation. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine yourself 5 years from now, stronger, wiser, braver. That version of you exists. He's already built. She's already alive. But that version is locked behind the decisions you make today. Every act of courage is a vote for that future. Every step through fear is a handshake with the self you were meant to be. But if you continue to wait, to stall, to defer, you will not meet them. You will meet a watered-down reflection, a faint echo of your potential. So ask yourself, which version of you are you committed to meeting? There's a rule I live by that I want to share with you now. It's simple, and it's changed the trajectory of many lives. Move fast on fear. When something scares you, an opportunity, a leap, a conversation, move toward it within seconds. Don't sit, don't analyze, don't wait. The mind is a genius at constructing reasons to wait. But when you move fast, you override the mind and lead from the soul. That is leadership, That is self-command. And that is how legacies are built, not from cautious contemplation, but from immediate alignment. One of the most powerful tools you can carry is a bias toward boldness. In every decision, choose the bold option, not the reckless one, but the courageous one, the one that requires you to stretch, the one that makes your hands sweat, the one that demands more of you than you've given before. Because the moment you start choosing boldness, you start building a track record of bravery. And soon your identity shifts. You no longer see yourself as someone who is trying. You see yourself as someone who acts, who leads, who moves, and the world responds accordingly. You might be wondering, what if I act and still feel afraid? What if I move and it still shakes me? That's the point. Mastery is not the absence of fear, it is the refusal to obey it. Even the most powerful men and women feel fear. They just don't serve it. They've built a muscle stronger than fear, a muscle called discipline. Discipline to follow through, discipline to stay the course, discipline to honor their vision more than their emotions. You can build that too, and it begins now in this moment, with this choice, to keep going. So what will you do with the fear you feel right now? Will you avoid it, entertain it, rationalize it, or will you face it, challenge it, override it? The answer defines your future, because every future is built on the bones of fear conquered. The question is never, will fear come? It will. The real question is, who will I be when it does? And your answer must be loud, clear, and absolute. Say it again. I choose growth over comfort. I will not bow to familiar fears. That is your new baseline. That is your new language. Speak it with force, with certainty, with identity, because from this point on, fear no longer decides. You do. Mastering fear does not happen once. It happens daily. Each morning presents a new decision. Will I bow to fear, or will I move in truth? And each night your results will answer that question. What we achieve, what we avoid, what we tolerate, all trace back to how we related to fear in that day. Most people never think this way. They see fear as some external enemy, something to fight or run from. But fear is internal. It is not out there. It's in here, in our thoughts, our stories, our past conditioning. And that means it is within our control. Not easy, no, but possible. And when something is possible, it becomes your responsibility. The question is, will you rise to that responsibility, or retreat into the comfort of old habits? There's a line you must draw, and it's not between you and fear, it's between who you are now and who you refuse to remain. Because if you don't decide who you will be, fear will decide for you. It will tell you what to say, what not to say, where to go, what to avoid, who to trust, who to doubt. And if you follow that voice long enough, you'll wake up one day a stranger to your own soul. That's what fear does. It erodes the edges of your identity until nothing sharp remains. But you were not made for erosion. You were made for elevation, for strength, for fire. And fire doesn't beg fear to leave. It burns so brightly that fear cannot stay. Let me share with you one of the most brutal truths I've ever learned. Most fear is not about failure, it's about judgment. It's not the fall we fear, it's being seen falling. It's the moment we miss the shot and they laugh. The moment we try and someone rolls their eyes. That's what keeps most people small. Not failure, perception. But here's the reality, the people who mock you are not building anything. The people who judge you are not risking anything. And the people who doubt you are not meant to define you. So why give them the power? Why let their opinions become your prison? This is where your power begins, when you stop fearing failure and start fearing regret. Because failure is feedback. It sharpens, it teaches. But regret is a weight with no form. It lingers, it haunts, it asks, what if? Until the end of your days. And if you let fear stop you, you are not avoiding pain. You are choosing a slower, quieter, more permanent kind. One that builds in silence and settles into your bones. But when you face fear, when you walk into the room, speak the truth, launch the thing, say the words, you trade regret for revelation. You discover who you are, and that discovery is worth everything. I want you to write this law down. It may be the most important yet. Fear is loudest at the door of purpose. Push it open, walk through, say it, post it, breathe it in until your cells believe it. I walk through the door of purpose. Fear does not get to decide. When fear grows loud, that is your cue. That's not a red light, it's green. It means you are near something sacred. It means you're brushing up against the edge of your old self and your new self is waiting just beyond. Let's look at your environment now. Who are the people around you? Do they encourage courage or reward comfort? Are you surrounded by builders or excuse makers? Because fear multiplies in groups that normalize hesitation. But courage grows where truth is spoken, where challenge is welcomed, where growth is the culture. You must protect your environment like a fortress. If you live in a house that tolerates fear, you will inherit that tolerance. But if you live in a mental and emotional world that demands action, that celebrates boldness, then fear becomes fuel, and your life becomes a fire that lights the way for others. And speaking of others, understand this. Your relationship with fear is not just about you. It affects everyone you lead, love, and live beside. When you choose fear, your children see it. Your partner feels it. Your team echoes it. Fear is contagious, but so is courage. When you act despite trembling hands, you give others permission to do the same. When you choose your calling over your comfort, you light a path that others will follow. You do not need to be fearless. You only need to be first. First to move, first to speak, first to rise. And in doing so, you change the atmosphere around you. Let us not forget that fear is ancient. It is wired into your biology. It served your ancestors in the wild. But you are not in the wild. You are not hiding from predators. You are building, growing, creating. The same fear that once kept men alive is now keeping men from living. So the question is, will you evolve? Will you rewrite the script? Will you honor your biology or your destiny? You cannot serve both. One will keep you safe. The other will make you significant. And only you can decide which path to walk. Return to the law, feel it, claim it. Let it shake something loose in your spirit. I walk through the door of purpose. Fear does not get to decide. This is not a motto. It is a mandate. It is how you must wake, act, speak, move, and sleep. As someone who has divorced the voice of fear and remarried the voice of vision. That is the new standard. That is the new identity. And that is the beginning of a very different life. There is a moment in every journey where the voice of fear rises louder than ever before. Not because you're going the wrong way, but because you're finally on the right path. Fear doesn't scream when you play small. It waits until you start moving in alignment with your purpose. That's when it panics. That's when it pleads with you to slow down, turn back, play safe. But hear me now, that is not a warning, it's a confirmation. Fear is proof of proximity. You are close to something sacred. You are standing at the threshold of change, and this is where most people retreat. But not you, because you now know the pattern. You know that fear at this level is no longer an obstacle, it is a rite of passage. You see, fear is not just an emotional reaction. It's a spiritual test. It asks, are you willing to become who you said you wanted to be? Not when it's easy, not when everyone supports you, but when the path is lonely, uncertain, and steep. That is the test. And those who pass it earn something priceless. Not applause, not approval, but authority. The kind of authority that cannot be faked. The kind that is felt when you walk into a room. Because you've faced the invisible dragons that most men run from. And you've walked through the fire, not around it. And you are still standing, still speaking, still rising. Let me remind you, fear is not eradicated. It is transcended. Through repetition, through discipline, through the stubborn refusal to quit. And this is where the final law must be etched into your mind forever. Fear is not a stop sign. It is a spotlight. It shines on the area where your power is needed most. Let it be written. Let it be spoken. Post it now in the comments. My power rises where fear appears. I am not here to pause. I am here to proceed. Let those words dig into your soul. Let them override the noise, the doubt, the trembling. Because what stands in front of you is not a wall, it is a mirror. And it's asking, will you rise now? Everything you've heard in this message has led to this, a choice. Not a one-time choice, but a lifestyle. Will you make fear your compass or your cage? Will you use it as the reason you move forward or the excuse to stay where you are? This is not motivational fluff. This is decision-making at the highest level. You can either build a life ruled by fear or forged through it. And only one path leads to greatness. The other leads to regret. And the difference is not talent. It is not background. It is not luck. It is the consistent habit of doing what most won't. Advancing while afraid. This is what separates the 5% from the 95. Not potential, not desire, but pattern. The 5% wake up and decide every day that fear is their servant, not their master. They don't wait for the world to change, they change themselves. They don't hope for confidence, they build it through movement. And they don't chase safety, they chase strength. That is the path you've been walking. And it's the path you must stay on, because ahead of you is the kind of life others only dream of. But you must earn it daily, not by being perfect, but by being consistent. If you've made it this far, you're not like most people. You're not here for shallow inspiration, you're here for transformation. You're here to reprogram your life at the level of identity. And fear is the final test. Not once, but every day. But now you have the tools, you have the language, you have the laws, and more importantly, you have the decision. Because fear may never leave, but it no longer leads. You do. So what happens next? You act. That's it. You take the idea, the decision, the conversation, the action you've been delaying, and you move. Now, not next week. Not when the nerves fade. Now, because you will never feel fully ready. But you are already fully capable. And the only thing between you and the next level is one courageous step. Just one. And then another. And another. Until one day, you look back and you don't recognize the timid version of yourself who once hesitated. Because you've walked so far, so consistently, so powerfully, that fear had no choice but to follow in silence. Let's close with one truth that will anchor this new chapter. You were not created to live in fear. You were born to lead through it. That is your identity now. Not timid, not reactive, but decisive, steady, purposeful. From this point forward, you walk with the wisdom of experience and the momentum of motion. You've felt fear. You've studied it. You've confronted it. And now you own it. So walk tall, speak clearly, move boldly. Not because fear is gone, but because it no longer matters. Now, if this journey has impacted you, if you feel stronger, clearer, more focused, help me spread this message. Like this video. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded that fear is not a verdict, but a signal. Comment your declaration. Subscribe for more. Because this isn't the end of a speech, it's the beginning of a new way of living. A life not ruled by fear, but mastered through it. My power rises where fear appears. I am not here to pause. I am here to proceed.